You got to be careful what you say, right? So, well, good day and welcome to the Mad River Valley's Chamber of Commerce's meeting with our legislative representatives, which is part of our ongoing community conversation series. Today's event is sponsored by our good friends at Sugarbush Resort and the Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom, as well as 175 members of the Mad River Valley Chamber of Commerce. The goal of this meeting is for our representatives in the House and the Senate to share their priorities, update us on how they see the legislation developing and how it'll impact our local economy. We also want to give our local business leaders the opportunity to ask questions and share their thoughts and perspectives. As everyone is well aware, this has been a pretty tough year for our community, especially in the hospitality sector. And while we are just beginning to see some signs of optimism, there's still plenty of concern and fear for our local businesses as we look towards the critical summer season. Specifically, many of this sector are seeking clearer guidance on events and weddings. They believe that there's a way to have more predictability that will give them a fighting chance to salvage the vital summer event and wedding season, and by doing so, mitigate the need for future grants to this ailing sector of our economy. So that all being said, I want to point out that this isn't the only topic that we want to talk about. I want to give folks the opportunity to ask questions about whatever is of interest to them. So that being said, I'd like to welcome our legislators that have joined us today. Our county senators, Ann Cummings is here. Andrew Perchlik is not here yet. He actually has a real business to run and is doing some other work and should be arriving hopefully before 5 o'clock. And we'll welcome him when he gets here. And Anthony Pollina. Also present will be our local representatives, Carrie Dolan and Maxine Grad. And what I'd like to do is give each of you folks just a couple of minutes, and like I said, really keep it short, maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the most, to share with us how you see the session going, what your legislative priorities are, and how the session will impact the Mad River Valley business community. And again, please try and keep this as succinct as possible so that you can leave plenty of time for Q&A. So Maxine, you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. And thank you so much for having us today. So in terms of how the legislative session is going, I think it's going well. It's going fast. Even though we did have sessions on Zoom in the actually spring, summer, and fall, this is much more intense, much longer sessions. So it's still a learning curve. However, we are still working. In terms of my priorities, many of you know I chair the House Judiciary Committee, but I'm going to put that work aside and focus on my priorities for the chamber and the chamber's interests. Certainly, keeping communications open with the hospitality industry, tourism industry is key. My role as a liaison between the governor's office or other committees of jurisdiction, I think, is important, and I hope that you lean on me, reach out to me, which many of you have. Certainly working with the House Commerce Committee is one of my priorities, and something that I do often to see how where they're coming down on COVID funds, and what businesses they're prioritizing, who they're hearing from, who they need to hear from, and again, making sure that your voices are being heard and considered. So we will be looking at a COVID relief bill at the end of this week in the House. House Appropriations, as of this afternoon, is still working on it, so I can't tell you exactly, what's in it. And then it does need to go over to the Senate. But certainly also the making sure that there is consistency and predictability in terms of guidelines, in terms of opening up this summer. I have heard from some of you. I have been in touch with the governor's office, and it sounds like there's a little bit of movement there. Broadband is another topic that's of very much interest to the Valley, and actually to the entire state. And I know that there is a major broadband bill that's being worked on by the House Energy Committee. So I'm going to stop there so other folks can weigh in. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Maxine. I really appreciate it. Is Carrie there?
I don't see her.
Okay. I don't see her either. Why don't we, Senator Pollina, would you like to be next up?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. I think this session is the priority of everyone. I mean, we all go into legislature with our own priorities, but I think this year particularly, you have to push some of those priorities aside and realize that we have a shared priority, excuse me, which is trying to make sure that our families and our businesses survive the pandemic. And that's really the focus of a lot of what we're doing. It's really the focus of most of what we're doing. Part of it is waiting to see how federal funds will come back to Vermont and how we will use those funds and target them in ways that we think will do the best. In terms of the Valley, I mean, not only are the venues an issue in terms of being able to plan ahead for weddings and things of that sort, but I'm really concerned about restaurants and what's happening to restaurants. I mean, they're not just businesses, that they're our community. I mean, restaurants are where you go to meet your friends and enjoy yourself. And it really worries me that we're losing so many restaurants and that many of them will probably not come back online again. I know that this time the federal government is considering in their package a bunch of money. I forget, it was a large amount. It seems like a large amount relative to Vermont always, but a lot of money that would go particularly towards restaurants and helping restaurant workers survive the pandemic. And I think that's really important. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. In terms of the state level, there's things we can do for restaurants as well. I mean, there's one program, which name I'm forgetting right now. It's called Everyone Eats, where there's money provided to restaurants who then buy food from local local farmers and prepare meals for low-income people who are in need. So I think there's things that we can do around with our own money as well. Housing is a big one, both from the point of view of landlords and tenants, because people can't afford to pay their rent, which is obviously a problem for them, but it's also a problem obviously for landlords who are still have to pay mortgages, even though they're not getting the rental income. Extended unemployment benefits is going to be really important that we maintain those for folks who are out of work for no cause of their own. In terms of other things, I serve on the Agriculture Committee and the Government Operations Committee. In Government Operations, we spend a lot of time looking at ways to make sure that we're prepared for what the pandemic and the impact it's having on our communities in terms of allowing municipalities, legislative bodies to meet remotely and things of that sort, and making sure that elections can be carried out in a way that is safe and secure for everyone. So we've actually been working on a bill that would put into statute some of the changes that we've made over the last year during this pandemic to allow us to do our elections more remotely in the future, as well as having a set of standards that would go into place when other emergencies pop up to allow municipalities to do their business remotely as much as possible. I serve on the Agriculture Committee as well, and we spend a lot of time there talking about ways to rebuild our food supply in the state. You know, one of the most heart-wrenching pieces of this whole pandemic was seeing those people lined up in their cars for food. We always knew that some Vermonters were food insecure, but the degree to which people are suffering from food insecurity is really shameful. So we've been looking at ways to bolster the local farm economy again, rebuild some processing plants, things of that sort, so that we can actually have more local food available. You know, we saw what happened when one big pork plant out west shut down. Basically, they were providing like 40% of the pork in the country. We can't rely on those kind of big manufacturers to provide us with the food we need during hard times. So we're looking at ways to support local small rural communities and the food industry and the agricultural industry as well. One of my other things I would just mention is that if there was no pandemic, what I would be saying is we should be talking about ways to change the way we fund education, move away from our reliance on property to fund education. And I would think we should be finding ways to invest in our state colleges to keep more Vermont kids here and make them able to go to college here. So that's sort of like I said, you got to put all those things aside for the most part and just do what we can to survive the next couple of months.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. And I didn't realize that you were the Tiger King.
Oh, I'm sitting in my daughter's daughter's room when she was much younger. She's gone away and has her own family and her own rooms now. But it's
a great look, though.
Yeah.
Ann Cummings, would you like to check in with us?
Yeah. I'll say since the last time I met with you, I'm feeling a lot like a weight has been removed from my shoulder because the chairmanship of the Joint Fiscal Committee rotates and I am no longer there. I'm on it, but I am not chairing. I think last time we talked, we had managed to get out as much CRF money as we could to the hospitality industry and had targeted. We were told by ACCD that it covered 100% of your loss through last September. There has been no other money coming in to cover your losses since then. We've got about 10 million left. The end of December, the administration proposed that we put that out as business grants. I believe it came in the budget adjustment as business grants. The legislature, the joint fiscal, and now the appropriations committee is asking that we target that again. We had tried to target it to small retail in your downtowns. I think restaurants would probably go in there. That got pulled out of the budget adjustment. And I think it may be going into this in process second, very speedy getting money out. We are committed to getting it out, but it's very limited and we want to make sure it gets to the folks that are really hurting. We've gotten several different shots of money out to Everyone Eats because we recognize that is a win-win for everyone and it's keeping some of our restaurants and farmers afloat. Now that we're back in regular session, my committee has been very focused on broadband. We've got 3 million, I think a little over 3 million of CRF funds that didn't go out last year. And we're trying to get those out this year, most targeted. I think we're looking at, we had line extensions, which is a grant that goes to an individual that's, a quarter mile from where the internet line ends, but it's very expensive to run that line to your house. So these were grants that allowed folks some help in getting those lines out there. And there's also a subsidy program that was undersubscribed last year that helps people buy the equipment or afford the monthly cost of being hooked up. This is recognizing that many, if not most, kids are still doing part of their schoolwork from home and people are working from home and people are getting some amount of their health care from home. So we're going to be focused on getting broadband out this year. We're waiting. We've got a meeting with Representative Welch Wednesday, maybe sometime in this coming week, to find out what we can expect from Washington. I think most of what we've heard so far is the state is not getting the CFR funds to distribute. The present proposal is for PPP funds for individual businesses to apply for. And I read today in one of the pop-up news things that the president is proposing that at least for 30 days, that be limited to businesses with, I think it's 20 employees or less, which I believe is the majority of Vermont businesses. But there was a lot of concern last time that some, major corporations were getting this money and the folks down in the bottom that had the least resources weren't getting it. So I think that's where we are. I think my priorities are survival of families, survival of businesses, And then we have those other two little survival interests that you may have heard of, the state pension fund, despite the fact that we have been fully funding it and paying very painful interest and penalties for past sins of underfunding, is in trouble. And the state colleges are looking for, I believe it is $25 million more a year. Right now, we're getting a lot of one-time federal money into the budget, but in 2 years, we're not anticipating that being there. And so we know that the colleges are economic engines in the communities where they're located, and we know they're essential, especially to lower income Vermont students, to be there. I spent the earlier part of my day, I'm on the VSAC board. And so we're all trying to maintain that ability to educate our students and trying to figure out how to afford it. So that's where we are at this point.
Well, thank you, Ann. There's lots going on, obviously.
Yes.
Carrie is not here, and I know Senator Perchlik is going to be joining us shortly. So when he pops on, I will make sure to introduce him. And I was expecting Carrie here. Hopefully she will show up as well. I messaged her as well. So I guess I'd like to start opening it up to some questions. And I know that there's folks in the room right now that have some questions. I thought I would start out with one that I got from one of our hospitality members. And I don't want to direct it to anyone in particular. I just think, I'll ask the question. If you guys want to jump in as you see fit, I'd appreciate it. The question is, what can you do to help our member businesses with more guidance in regard to events and weddings before it's too late to matter for this summer season? Ann?
Okay, I'll jump in on that one. The legislature is not making those decisions. I'm going to look to Representative Grad, who chairs Judiciary, but we are operating under a declared public health emergency. And like most emergency declarations, the power to make decisions during that emergency migrates. And at this point, the shots are being called by the Commissioner of Health and the governor. And that's probably good, because given the legislative process, we probably wouldn't decide anything until August. It's my understanding, I know we just did some changes for people with their vaccinations. If you've got 2 and you're 2 weeks out, you don't have to quarantine, which should help wedding parties. Our biggest hurdle at this point, and the reason we're still being very stringent, is because we are not getting the vaccines. If we could get more vaccines, we're doing a real good job of getting them into the arms of people, but we aren't getting the vaccines we need. So if nationally the vaccines can become available and people get them, then a lot of these restrictions could start going away. But we're waiting for the vaccines.
Maxine, anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Senator Cummings that a lot of this is coming from the governor's office due to the due to the emergency. And so I think one thing that I can certainly continue to do is to just keep communicating with you and ACCD to make sure that those guidelines, those metrics that some of you have spoken to me about are forthcoming. I think we saw a little inkling Friday or so, but need to keep that momentum going. And I do have a good relationship with the governor's office, and thrilled to reach out whenever. So I'd to add.
Thanks, Maxine.
Yeah.
We have a question from Sean Kramer, who owns the 1824 house, along with his wife Farrell. Sean, you have a question?
Well, before we get to that, I saw that Senator Pollina was actually looking to make a statement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Yep.
no, that's okay. It's nothing particularly original. I was thinking I was going to agree with both Maxine and Ann in the sense that the decisions are being made by the governor under his executive orders because of the emergency. But I do think that we can, as a group, continue to make the governor know that we want this to be a priority. And I think there was an inkling of recognition of that over the last couple of days, which is good. And it shows that everybody wants something these days, and there's a lot of competing interests, but we have to make sure that the hospitality industry is really at the top of the list in terms of what they're thinking about as much as possible. And also, I wonder whether there's, when you talk about the metrics and what we're hoping to have come out, there's the indoor venues, but then there's also a lot of these events that take place outdoors, I would imagine. I don't know, in terms of the summer season. So I would hope that we could get some idea as to what it would take to return to inside gatherings and inside, occupancy and whatnot, but also maybe a separate but related metric, which has to do with outdoor venues. I know that means we got to hope for good weather, but I think that, we could resume some outdoor events in a way that would be useful to the hospitality industry and not put people in danger.
Thanks. Sean, you want to ask your question?
Sure, it's a bit of a statement, but I'd like to thank the senators and the representatives for joining us. It really is appreciated, and we've had a chance for a number of you to join us in the past as well, and so we do appreciate it. When I was getting ready to speak today, I started writing a statement that I felt would shed some light on where we are personally as a business, as well as communally as the lodging and event sectors. I wrote about the impact of the state's travel restrictions, the industry's commitment to keeping our guests and communities safe, and the need for transparent metrics. When I asked for some feedback from colleagues, sorry, computer decided to ring on us here. When I asked for feedback from colleagues, I was told my words showed a lot of anger and hostility. I was just really a bit shocked because that was not what I had intended at all. I thought I'd crafted a well thought out and respectful State of the Union type of report. Apparently my stress and frustration built to a point where I didn't even notice it anymore. I apologize for the ringing, everybody, but that's what happens when you hook your computer up to your phone. But after getting over my anger of being called angry, I decided to start over, and hopefully I'll keep this brief. This pandemic has taken a toll on everyone. We've all been impacted in different ways. As an inn, we've been trying to balance the desire and need to host guests with the struggle to trust our guests to honor the state's travel regulations. Our occupancy is down 60% over the last 6 months compared to the same time period last year. Our revenue is down 56%, but our fixed costs remain the same. As a wedding venue, we're trying to help couples plan for an already stressful day during this time of great uncertainty. After losing 95% of our weddings last year, we're steadily losing the weddings we have on the calendar for this year. Some brides and grooms have simply decided to move on with life and start a family or buy a house, while others are getting cold feet due to the lack of clarity about the rules for events and travel. I think the most important step towards a road to recovery is a plan. The hospitality sector has proven over the past year that we can follow guidelines and implement strategies to keep our guests and community safe above and beyond the efforts of the general public. Both VOP and the VLA have been working diligently to create blueprints to help reopen the travel and event businesses in a safe and timely manner. We're not looking to rush the process, but simply keep it moving forward. In the past year, we've been instructed by everyone to keep trying to have our voice heard. We've sent emails and letters and made calls to the administration and our legislators, as you guys all know. What I'm asking you at this time is actually to help be our voice. I understand the administration makes decisions independently from the legislature, but as our elected officials, we need your help to get the word to them. Just please reach out to your colleagues, reach out to the administration, and help amplify our voice. So it once again, more of a statement than a lot of questions, but we're just asking for, help be our voice to the administration so they understand our individual stories, which, is the key. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Well, it sounded like I said it wasn't more of a statement than a question. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to it or just we'll keep rolling.
No, I would just say that I think Sean and all of you have every right to feel a lot of frustration, which may sometimes seem like anger because what we're experiencing. And I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs these days. And I think nobody should be apologized for the level of frustration we're all feeling. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Kim Donahue from the Round Barn, I believe, has a question.
Thank you very much. Senator Pollina, Senator Cummings, Representative Grad, thank you so much for everything that you have done for us. Last week, because you made the effort to, in part, to talk to your colleagues and to make our plight known, we feel very certain that the ACCD made that announcement in part because of the fact that our voices were heard and you communicated them. So thank you very much. And it was funny, Friday that announcement came through on email, I had this rush of not knowing what to do with myself. Like I started to almost bounce off the walls like, oh, there's a wedding. I have to do a wedding. And I think it's taken actually a few days to digest actually that we had gotten part of the information that we had requested was we had requested metrics, and in the absence of actual physical metrics, just the concept that we would be able to return to last year's levels was enough to save 2 weddings already since Friday night. The first thing that I did Friday night after that email was I sent emails to all of our couples who were on the fence, and 2 of them actually stopped their process to reschedule into 2022 and said, we'll hold until the middle of March. And hopefully there'll be better news forthcoming then as well. And that's fantastic because we asked for that information so that we could stem the tide of losses for the second half of this year, recognizing that that information is not going to do anything for us for the first half of the year. And for all of the losses that we have incurred that have not been funded, because as you well know, the last bits of aid came to us based on our losses through September 2020. So I can tell you that that wasn't even the busiest part of our year. So the time between September 30th of last year and the end of 2020, there's a tremendous amount of loss at that point. We're a business that was capped. So the aid that we got was barely 10% of the loss that we incurred. I'm down nearly 100% this year. I have not been open for lodging, and we have not been able to have any of the weddings that had been scheduled and that have now canceled or moved into later 2021 or 2022. So until we can actually get to that point where we're generating that revenue again, we are very, very grateful to hear that there's additional aid that's coming from the state. This $10 million will certainly help some of our colleagues, not just in the industry, but in the business world in Vermont. That was a really long way to get to my next question, which was House members, are you aware of the House bill on short-term rentals? There is a bill, the Senate bill is not seeing any movement, but the House bill is. Does anybody have any information on that or anything you'd like to share about that?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have much, but I know that there's a lot of concern about the bill on both sides, and the chair of House General, which is the chair Committee of Jurisdiction, said that certainly all sides will be at the table, and that they will hear the testimony and certainly understand the concern.
Great, thank you. Some of the points that bill include forming a registry for short-term rentals. And while we don't want there to be any unintended consequences of that bill, meaning we don't want to stop short-term rentals, but we do think that it's fair that there is some sort of registry. When this lodging ban started last March, I think that it became painfully apparent that there was an entire industry of lodging that was not able to be contacted, that was not able to accept the visits from the state police that all of the lodging members on this call have, and that they were not held to the same attestation requirements. They were not holding their guests to the same attestation requirements. So while that's only one part of it, I think the more important part is the short-term rental impact on housing, because that impact on housing is impacting the quality of life, particularly in the Mad River Valley, and also workforce. We're now all going to be facing this workforce shortage that is even worse because this is a difficult place to commute to. And if we can't find some place for these people to live, then we aren't going to have the qualified and talented talent pool that we really, really need in order to thrive. And I just have one other quick clarification. I think it was, maybe it was Senator Cummings. You talked about the next bit of aid coming down. Is that the American Rescue Act that you'll be talking to Representative Welch? No, it's something different.
I don't know.
We don't know what anything's called.
Yeah. When the check comes in, we spend it, but I don't know what it's called.
The other question that I have on that is, you talked about 20 employees or less. There's been some question about the definition of 20 employees or less. Is that 20 FTEs? And I would request that it be 20 FTEs as opposed to 20 employees.
Yeah,
we
I don't know.
Okay, particularly in the Mad River Valley, we deal with a workforce that is primarily part-time. Not primarily, but there's a large portion of our employees that are part-time. So allowing us to use FTEs as opposed to 20 physical bodies would certainly allow for the help to go to the employees, to the businesses where the employees need the most help.
Thank you. Senator Perchlik was able to join us. I just thought you might introduce yourself and kind of maybe give a minute or two about what your priorities are and how you see the session going, and what you might have to say to the Mad River Valley business community.
Great, thank you, Eric. Yeah, I'm Andrew Perchlik, newest Washington County Senator. I guess just as new of all the representatives of Washington County, or at least of the Valley. I'm on the Transportation and Education Committee, so I don't deal directly with the kind of issues that affect the Mad River Valley businesses, other than the transportation issue, which I know is important. As Kim just mentioned, getting the workforce up to the Valley is important. And we dealt a little bit with that last year, 2 years ago, with making sure that there's buses to get workers up to the ski areas. And I'm interested in continuing to work on those kind of workforce transportation issues, but also just other transportation issues that affect, the quality of life. I'm glad that we got some infrastructure improvements made to the roadway up there, getting rid of that 1-lane bridge and things like that. So that's kind of, I care about and want to be as helpful as I can, and I can help lobby my colleagues. But the truth of the matter is, since I'm not on those committees, when I think of my priorities or what I'm really able to affect, and so that's what I work on, it's the transportation and education issues. And that's just the way to be an effective legislator, I think, is to work on the things that you can work on. And that way I can have the most positive impact. That said, I'm willing and able to help work with the Washington County delegation and the representatives up in the Valley to do what we can to get the business support, to get the guidance clear, to do what we can do to help the tourism industry in the Valley, which is not only important for the Valley, but important for the whole county and for the whole state. So I think that's what I would say to the businesses that are here today, and happy to answer any questions or have further discussion on the topics.
Thank you very much, Senator. We appreciate it and appreciate you making the time to be with us. I know there's folks in the room that have some questions, and so please feel free to just jump in if you want to. Does anyone have any specific questions? Roger Nishi from the Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for all of the senators and representatives for joining us today. I just want to bring up that the current bill that's in the House Energy and Technology Committee that is promoting the startup of new entities to build broadbands in the state. As an industry, we just feel it's the wrong way to go. As companies right now, we are prepped and ready to build broadband, and we have the capabilities, the ability to do so. We have and we know how to build the networks. We aren't startup entities, but currently, just to back up a little bit for everyone on the call, the state wants to fund new entities called communications union districts to build broadband in areas that are considered underserved. And in creating these entities, the way the bill's written now, there's nothing in it for the incumbents at this point in time. Anything that we can do, we need to do through a communications union district. And having a startup entity say, no, you can't build here because we want to build here, we just don't believe that's in the best interests of the customers and consumers in the state. We look at this as really, and we understand there's startup entities with volunteers that want to build broadband. But at the same time, they discuss, it's so difficult and it's so risky that VITA has even said, we're having trouble coming up with ways for you to bring you the money. You need to guarantee the loans in some form or fashion. And one of the co-op electric utilities that looked at going into this, they basically said it's not in their best interest financially wise to do so. So we just think it's right now, it's the wrong direction for the state to be going in. They really need to take a look at those that have built the networks to fill in the gaps that are underserved. And I've talked a lot. Kurt Grunling is also from Waitsfield Telecom, and he often fills in the blanks in areas that I've missed, and feel free to do so, Kurt.
Thank you, Roger, and thanks to all our representatives for being on the call and taking the time today, and for all you've been doing on behalf of the Valley and Vermont. I know it's been a difficult year for many folks, and your jobs have been extremely difficult. I certainly wouldn't want to be in the position to make some of the hard choices that you've all had to make each and every day. And I know that this has been going on way longer than I think most of us thought it would be, certainly in the beginning. But as Roger said, us at Waitsfield, we're a third generation family owned business, as most of you know. We're all about building rural broadband. We've been doing it for a long time and investing a lot of money each and every year. In fact, our capital construction budget is another record budget this year of almost $10 million. So everything we're generating is going right back into capital construction projects and building fiber to our customers. We all don't need to debate the importance of broadband anymore. I heard it earlier, and I think we can all agree, the role that it plays, how it's critical to, not only the economic, social, and racial equality, and everybody deserves universal access to broadband these days. The challenge that we all know, right? It's really a time and money equation. And I heard the pension funds come up earlier, and broadband's no different. While we as independent service providers have been investing large capital construction budgets every year in order to make that transition to a 100% fiber optic network, it's just a really large number. It's a time and money equation. And the economics of building rural broadband are obviously much more expensive in the low density rural areas than they are in the cities. So, that's where, state and federal dollars can help. And Roger, I'll use my term, bend the economics of building those rural networks. And, in fact, that's where the state has unfortunately underinvested, I think, for a long time in terms of helping service providers to make that happen. I got a call on Friday from a friend who owns a company out in Iowa, and Iowa is in a very similar situation. This isn't a unique a situation that's unique to Vermont. And the governor just actually put $450 million up over the next 3 years to help with grants to existing service providers to fill the gaps in underserved areas when it comes to broadband. And those are the numbers we're talking about, that needed in Vermont. Right now, the current, bill that's in the House basically writes us out of getting access to those funds without partnering with a CUD. We were very fortunate and very thankful to receive, what was it, Roger, just right around $1 million at the end of last year, which was, obviously helped to complement, our existing construction budgets and our existing, we had some shovel-ready projects, and within 2.5 months, we were able to convert another 350-ish customers, as a result of receiving some of that CARES Act money from the state. So, that's the kind of stuff with more money, we can build more of it, reach more people quicker.
Does anyone have any comments on that? Senator Cummings?
Okay, that one's mine. I haven't seen the House bill. I've been told that there is a major House bill coming our way. I'm also told that Senator Brock has a major bill. I believe he sent me a copy like last night, and I haven't had a chance to read it today. I think maybe the small local telecom companies are getting caught up in something of a tension with the major national players who are doing a lot of this, and the CUD, and the major national guys do the valleys and, leave the guys up in the hills alone. I don't think the small local telecoms are doing that. And I don't think anyone, at least in my committee, wants to leave you out. There is a desire to help these local districts bring broadband where nobody else will go. But I'll have to look at the bill, but that would not be my intention to have you left out. I know Franklin Telephone's been in to talk. They're doing a lot. I think we're just trying to find providers who will, I think is it 10 residents per mile makes it economically viable, which leaves out a lot of Vermont. And we're trying to find a way to get the money out there. Right now, we don't have any money. But it's anticipated that the feds will come up with some money, and we will be ready to get that out. But the Senate has made no decisions at this time. The House will send us something, and I'm famous, a bill that you change, you like to, it's called the Christmas tree. You hang different things on it. I like decorating. And so this bill could look somewhat different when it comes out of the Senate.
Thanks, Senator. Appreciate that. Are there any folks that have some questions in our gallery here?
I think Maxine had some possible comments.
Yeah, can I just quickly respond? Yeah, I'm happy to talk to the chair of the Energy Committee, Representative Briglin, to express your concerns. And like Senator Cummings said, things will start in one body and then they go to the next, where it starts all over again. So, so I think it's important that we keep talking all along the way. But I'm happy as a chair to talk to Chairman Briglin for you. So.
Thank you, Eric. Can I just make one point? I want to be clear too. We're not against the CUDs at all. And in fact, Roger and I have been spending a lot of time with the various CUDs around the state as of late, just helping educate them in terms of, what things could look like. And so from that standpoint, we understand it's going to take a multifaceted approach, right, to build, and that might look different in different areas. So, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't feel like we were, against the concept, and we totally understand there might be a certain price cap carrier that operates in the state that underinvested for many years and, puts us in, the situation that we're in today. So thank you both.
Good. Any other folks in the gallery here that have some questions at all? So that's surprising.
Yeah, I can talk more, but I think they've heard what I have to say.
I think one of the big questions that I've been asked by several folks in going back to the guidance issue is, I think what's been frustrating has been that the onus has been put on this business community to be voicing, to be the voice and getting in front of our legislators, and we keep being asked to do that. And it's been hard for us to get in front of the administration. And I guess I have a question for our representatives, our senators and our reps. What is the best way for us to get in front of the folks in the administration? Because it's been hard. We had a meeting in theory set up with Dr. Levine last week, and that didn't end up happening. And it just seems really frustrating and we don't quite know what else to do beyond what we're doing. Do you guys have any guidance at all? Maxine, yeah.
I would be glad to request a meeting. I did that for one of the childcare providers in the Valley, and was able to get a meeting with them and Department of Families and Children and Department of Environmental Conservation. And somebody from the governor's office. So I can certainly do that. But I'm sorry that meeting didn't happen with Dr. Levine, and I'm sorry that you have had trouble getting to the governor's office. Yeah.
Eric, can I chime in just for a second?
Yeah.
Have you been talking to Austin too from Lake Champlain? Because we have that Thursday call with the congressional delegation, as well as many of the state officials are on that call every week. And I think it's Roger, Thursday afternoons, I think, right? Like 3 o'clock-ish.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to, if you're not already on that list, I can get you added quickly.
We are, and I talked to Austin just today.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and I said that's sort of the the frustrating thing, and I think and please, if there's any of the business owners that want to jump in, and I don't want to speak for you, although I guess sort of my job, is that we're just sort of surprised, like how when we talk about some of these things, like it's news to people, and that the fact, and I kind of question as I bring it up to legislators and to this whole lobbying effort that we're kind of being thrust into, and that the stuff that we're talking about and the impacts that it's having on businesses is like news to people. And that's what I find really frustrating. And we have business owners. I talk to business owners. Obviously, that's my job, and that's what I do near every day. It's hard to get through a day without having one of our business owners literally in tears and without knowing what to do. They call me because they don't know what else to do. I have business owners that are literally getting sick and having heart attacks and strokes and like things like that. It's messed up. And I kind of don't know what to tell them. And then when, I feel like, we tell these stories, and, these lobbyists, these professional lobbyists seem to like hearing our stories, and because they're so heartfelt and everything. But it's hard to imagine that folks in government don't understand that this is going on, and that we really need to spend our time telling them that. And I guess, is that the case?
It's hard to imagine people in the legislature not knowing what's going on. I think that if anything, I'm not a psychologist, but I think there's a little bit of denial going on, because people feel pressure coming from so many directions, perhaps. Because I think what you're describing is really pretty common, the fact that people are getting, as the other fellow mentioned before, frustrated and, depressed. I mean, this is a really hard thing we're going through. I mean, there's going to be a lot of mental health issues that are going to come out of this pandemic. But I think it's unconscionable for legislators to say that not aware of what's going on. I mean, I don't see how that could possibly be the case, to tell you the truth. I think that your role, whether you like it or not, has become sort of like you've always been a counselor to businesses because of their doing their work, but now it's gone beyond that. And it's kind of emotional counseling as well. And I think we're all finding ourselves in that situation to some degree. I think there's a possibility that some legislators are just getting sort of, I don't know what the word would be, but kind of shut down because they're hearing so much negativity. And to be perfectly honest, we sit on these Zoom meetings all day, from like 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 or 5:30 in the afternoon. We're like Zooming and talking about issues. And it does seem there's a level at which it seems a little overwhelming at times. And this is not the best way to make policy, quite honestly. I mean, it's, Zoom policy making is not the best way to go about it. So anyway, I don't want to go on, but I think, I understand what you're saying. And I think that people they cannot deny what's going on. It's just really serious. And going back to what Maxine said before, I would be more than willing to participate in a meeting with the administration if that would be useful as well. Because I think that, and I also think might have been Kim mentioned once before that there's a tourism caucus that is maybe going to try to play more of a role. I'm not a part of that caucus, but could certainly participate in anything that goes on around the tourism caucus. But I think, I think even though the tourism caucus is an entity that is willing to sort of speak up, I think it's important that the Mad River Valley folks continue to, speak up as well. Don't feel like you can be quiet because someone else is going to speak up on your behalf. I think it's important that you folks continue to be heard.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Senator Perchlik?
Yeah, one thing that I agree with what was said before, and especially what Maxine said or Representative Grad, that we'd all be happy to help set up a meeting. I've done that. We've all done that for folks when they have a difficulty getting a meeting. And it's not always with, the governor or the commissioner. Sometimes you just meet with the right staff member, and that's better because they're the ones that actually kind of do the work. I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say, but I guess I'll just say that. Oh, this is what I was going to say. We've been meeting. We met a couple times with the city of Montpelier, and what we realized there is they had a similar issue. They were like, "Hey, we got a lot of things. Why don't our legislators know about them?" Well, kind of like Anthony said, there's a lot going on. And what was helpful is that we decided to meet more regularly with the city council because things come up. And if we only waited till there's a crisis, then there's so many, especially something like this, where it's a statewide crisis, we're getting so many messages from so many crises from so many sectors. But if we're in more regular contact, and that's on us too, I don't want to put it on you guys to reach out to you so we know what's going on a regular basis. I think that's important. So if we could do these kind of meetings on a regular basis, just so we know who you are better and know what the kind of the day-to-day issues are, that might be some way that just to make it go better in the future.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I appreciate that sentiment. And, from the chamber perspective, I think it's especially doing it this way, it's easy enough to do. And I must say, this meeting came about because we were trying to get some discussions going about that guidance issues. And, the fact that, within, I think it was, Tuesday or Wednesday last week, I sent out a thing to everyone and I heard back from all 5 of you within 24 hours and had a meeting set up in just a few days. I mean, I think that that's really impressive. I don't think that that happens in a lot of states. So I do feel like that you folks are responsive and we'll certainly keep doing these kinds of things. I did have a question came up in the chat from one of our retailers, which is going in a little bit of a different direction. And she asks, have there been any results from the Buy Vermont holiday campaign? She knows that there was a follow-up survey, but hasn't seen the results of that. Does anyone can address that at all?
Not that I've seen.
No,
Yeah, and I think it was the NIFT program. And that
I've
was
heard about
something,
it, but I haven't seen any results.
okay. Yeah, it's not the NIFT one, I'm sorry. And she writes also, would it help again to promote what happens when money is spent here or otherwise? I'd like to think the results of that test may help show if it was worth doing or trying again. So, okay, that's a good question. Does anyone else have any? We're pulling up on about an hour and we wanted to keep it to about that. Does anyone have any last questions, comments, concerns that they'd like to address at this point in time?
Eric, Kim has her hand up.
Oh, Kim.
Oh, thanks, Roger. Just very briefly, I think we're going back to the communication issue. I think that sometimes the subtleties of some of the communication are what gets lost. So, for example, while let's just use this latest announcement from the ACCD saying that sometime this spring or summer that we will be able to return to events. The subtlety of that is that that we're still waiting in that period of time. So some people might see that as a win and we got what we asked for. But the subtlety of that is we asked for that for future business. So I think that that's probably something that I could work on better. When I reach out, it's because I've exhausted all of my other opportunities and other options. So I'll be better at talking about the subtleties to abbreviate some of the.
Just to add to what Kim said, and I've heard others discuss this, it comes down to knowing what the speed limit is. And if there's some type of measurement out there that they can point to say, hey, we're getting close to this measurement, we can start ramping up what we're doing as our business and do some planning and maybe call back employees. We will not go too far, but if there are certain levels that are hit and then we realize we're getting closer to getting approvals, I think that would help out each and every business that's on this call.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, the big thing, Roger, is that that's exactly what we've been asking for. And it's frustrating for people. It just seems like people don't understand that, and that people do we really have to instruct people that before a wedding takes place, 90 days out, we need to let people know what's going on, and that yes, you're gonna have your florist, you're gonna have your band, your DJ, or whatever. You're gonna have all of these things need to be set up, and that you just can't say, oh, you can have like sports, oh, you can start having high school sporting events on Friday. Great, but did they have the opportunity to make schedules and do all the other things that need to get done and figure out how it's going to happen? I mean, this happened with the ski areas in November. They got it thrust upon them. Stuff that they were not expecting, and I think it's been a really hard thing to kind of relate to. But yeah. So, but yes, I think I really agree with you there, Roger.
Senator Cummings has her hand up, and so does Peter.
Yep.
Okay. I think the frustration you're expressing is probably frustration that everyone is feeling in their own sphere. I don't know how many times I've emailed and said to people, this is an unknown territory. There is no map. When we go through a standard depression, the economists can tell us, okay, this is when it should bottom out, and this is when it, will start going back up, and you can track it. There's history. This one, there is no history. And so, you say, okay, you can start. And when, the infection rate hits this, or the vaccination rate, and then a new strain or something happens, that one of those sporting events turns into a super spreader, then all bets are off again. And I think it's because people do feel your pain. We're all sharing it. I have a very small business, and my overhead I'm paying every month, and my income is not coming in. I'm not looking at that to put food on the table, but I know what it feels like to be losing money. And I know what it feels like to say, when are the tourists coming back? Because I need the tourists. When are they coming back? Every restaurant in Montpelier wants to know when the state employees are coming back. We don't know. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration is, that nobody can give clear answers. We can, you could probably get somebody in the administration to say, okay, I think there was something that said when the positive rate went over 2%, we'd shut all the businesses down, and it stayed below. But you could have all your weddings planned and something could just shoot it all out of the water. So I think we just don't know the answers. This is new territory, and it's scary, and people are hurting. And I think, everybody gets frustrated and touchy and sounds angry. I just say, from my personal experience, I was the mayor in Montpelier when there was the flood, and people watched their businesses literally go down the river. And I discovered my job, since I didn't have any of those emergency management roles, was just to stand there and let people vent their frustration. It was very short-lived, but you don't watch everything you've worked for potentially go down the river without reacting. And I couldn't tell them when the water was going out any more than I can tell you when the virus is going away. We're just all in this painful situation together. And on the bright side, we've done this without splitting apart in Vermont. We're still having this very civil discussion, and that's a good thing. Doesn't make anyone feel any better, but we are all still in this together, and we'll come out of it together, one way or the other. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think that's a really great place for us to maybe come to stop, and really appreciate our senators and our representatives for joining us today. And we'd like to invite you. We'll certainly do this again in the future. And hopefully we'll have more successes and happier things to talk about. But I do think it's a really, we're very appreciative, willing to do this and take your time, especially now in the middle of the session like this. And we'll try to be a little more, do a little bit better planning going forward. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Be well.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.